Okay, today is November 12th, 2012. We're at the University of Northern Iowa Museum, and I'm here with Jean Hall. Jean, thank you very much for joining us today and for helping us with our project about Iowa rural schools.
Okay.
Where and when did you attend country school?
I attended in southwest Iowa in 1936 up to 1945. We had 1 year of primary. They didn't call it kindergarten, it was called primary. And then you had the 8 grades after that. And my school was called Olive Branch. It was 3 miles south of Clarinda, right on Highway 71 on the west side there. And so many people would remember our school, being it was right on a highway. So many of them were off on the gravel or the dirt roads and so forth. But ours was right on a main highway.
You went to school the whole time then, all your 9 years were right here at Olive Branch.
That's right.
How far away did you and your family live?
We lived about a mile away on a farm, and so.
What tasks did you have to perform before you left for school?
Well, of course, we got up and got ready and had our breakfast and packed our lunches. And I was from a big family, and so I guess us girls helped pack lunches for the boys, the brothers too. And I think we even washed the dishes part of the time.
How many in your family?
Well, there were 7 children, and our grandpa lived with us. Then we had a hired man and a hired girl a lot of the time in those early years. So we usually had like 13 around the table for most of the meals.
What did you wear to school?
Usually dresses and well, if it was cold weather, then you wore these long cotton stockings. If it was real cold, we had long underwear on underneath that. And that was always ugly looking, bunch up around your ankles, and we couldn't wait for weather to be warm so we could roll those down or get back to anklets or whatever.
How often did you change your long underwear?
Oh, it wasn't, I mean, it'd just be, weekly, I would guess. Because that's, we only washed weekly.
When did you leave? What time of day did you leave for school? Do you remember?
Around 8:15.
Do you think, what time did school start then?
9 o'clock.
And how did you get to school?
Well, we walked most of the time. Sometimes we'd get a ride. And I remember one time when the roads were really deep with snow. And my dad had to get the wagon and horses out. And we also had cans of milk that needed to be brought out to the highway. But anyway, I remember going to school a few days with riding in that wagon, sitting on a bale of something.
Do you remember anything special about your walks to school? Any special sights or sounds?
Well, I recall meadowlarks, and they like to nest even on the ground, and they like to sit on the fence posts and sing. There would be bees, and we could hear the traffic on Highway 71, a lot of the trucks, and you could just hear that sound. We did cross a railroad track, but seldom did we have any traffic on that. A few times there'd be these men that were repairing tracks, and it was always a little scary to me that these kind of strange men were along there working on the track, but it didn't happen very often. And I wasn't alone. There was always a bunch of us.
So you always had someone to walk to school with your 6 brothers and sisters?
Yes.
Please describe your schoolhouse and its surroundings.
Okay, well, it was a big, of course, just one-room schoolhouse, and several steps up high, and the pump was out in the front. And then you came in, and then there was what we call the cloakroom, and it was a narrow entrance room, went clear across the whole width of the school, and then there were 2 doors that went into the actual classroom. And in the northeast corner was a big round furnace that would have and should have been in a basement probably, but that's what's heated the school, and so that was up in that corner. The teacher's desk was then south of that and up in the front, and then we had a piano over there, and then lots and lots of desks because we had a big school.
What did you do once you arrived at the school?
Well, when we came in that big front door, then you would go to your left, which would be north, and put your lunch pails or lunch sacks. Well, we always had lunch pails, and set your lunch pails there. And then if you carried something to school for your desk, well, then you'd go and do that. Otherwise, if it wasn't 9 o'clock, then you could go out and play for a while, or talk to your friends.
Let's talk about outside. Was there any playground equipment, supplies, trees?
Yes, we had the swings, the big swing set, rings, one set of rings that hung down, and then we had one short higher bar that we call the trapeze, and then we had 2 teeter-totters, and then over on the south side of the school area there were 3 bases for playing softball, and that where the grass was always worn, and it was just kind of a little dugout area.
These were permanent bases, or?
Yes, I mean it wasn't any canvas or anything. It was just that they were just always worn out. Then we had a little pony barn that was out there on that southwest corner, and so sometimes some of the kids would ride ponies and keep their ponies there all day. And it had a little loft in that pony barn in one end of it. And once or twice we found, looked like signs that a bum or somebody had stayed and slept in that pony barn. I don't know if that was ever true, but that was kind of exciting.
Did you ever ride a pony to school?
No, I didn't. One of my brothers used to.
Did you have, now was this brother older or younger?
No, he was older.
Were there trees on the playground, a flagpole?
Oh yes, we had a flagpole, and that was there kind of on the northeast corner, coming out from the schoolhouse. And then we had, I guess maybe 3 or 4 trees. Now we have one picture of when I was in school, of us when we were still doing the flags, a pledge to the flag the old way. I don't know if you remember anything about that.
I don't know what you mean when you talk about the old way.
You don't?
No.
Well, many people don't. But the flag's salute used to be what you would call like saluting Hitler, Heil Hitler. I'll have to get you some information on that sometime. It's called the Bellamy Pledge.
Bellamy?
Bellamy.
Bellamy.
But that was the main, that was the way everybody did it. And then after World War II started, then they changed it to where then you put your hand over your heart.
Can you show us what you did for the Bellamy Pledge?
Let's see. It was I pledge. Well, let's see. I can't stand up, but I pledge allegiance.
I can move
you
this
started.
if you want to stand up.
Well, I don't think I can probably do it.
Oh, okay.
But anyway, you started out with I pledge allegiance to the flag. So your hand went clear up like this with the palm up. You start out with the palm down, and then it would the United. Then you went ahead and say the rest of it. So you might check that out sometime, because there's some pictures of it and everything.
Okay. I'm
And
glad
then
you
I
shared
think
that
it
with me.
was after the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, and I don't know. I think it was within a year after that because the Italians and the Germans were doing their salutes so much like this that the United States wanted to not have that, and then you put your hand over your heart, and then, so it's been that way clear until 1956, and then 1956, then President Eisenhower had us add under God, and that's the way it is now.
So you came in and set your lunchbox up, and then if it wasn't 9 o'clock, you went outside.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say it's 9 o'clock and now everyone's inside. What did you do first?
Well, we came in, and of course, and found our seats, and I think the teacher probably took attendance, and then there was, I don't know if she had announcements to make then, and or I don't know, it seemed like we had maybe some sharing that we could do, or news articles or something like that.
Okay, you've started describing the interior of the building. Tell us more about the interior. You mentioned a piano and desk, chalkboard.
Oh, we had a lot of, and they were black boards. We didn't even know anything about green boards or white boards then. There were many of those, and then we had real like cream colored wallpaper. Every few years they would repaper the schoolhouse, and it was always just a kind of an eggshell kind of a color, and some big pictures hung on the wall, and we had a Victrola, and we had of course, like I said, many desks, and a bookcase in the back that had some glass doors on it. It stood on the floor. It wasn't a real big bookcase, but it was there. And let's see. Well, of course, we had a recitation bench. We had a recitation bench up there, in front of the teacher's desk. And then we had one over by the wall, and when guests would come, or if we needed another one. And some of the desks were the big wide ones, and then of course we had medium size, and then we had the little small ones, because there were about 35 children in my school, and so we had the little 5-year-olds clear up through 8th grade, so you needed a variety of sizes. And it was always a desk apiece. We never had it where you just had 2 people in one of those big desks.
Would you say of the 35 children, they were pretty evenly spread out between the 9 grades?
Well, toward the end of when I was there through 1945. I mean, in May of 45. That last year, so that would have been 44 or 45, we had an extra big beginners or primary class. We had 6, I think it was. And usually most of the classes were 2 or 3, maybe 4. But that was, we had I think it was 6 beginners.
How many were in your class?
There were just 3 of us. And then one of them moved away later on, and then there were just the 2 of us.
And do you remember those children quite well?
Yes, Betty is still alive, but she has Alzheimer's now. And I haven't seen her for quite a while, and the other one that moved away, no, I didn't.
And did Betty go all 9 years too?
Yes.
Okay.
But she ended up that she didn't go much of high school, and she dropped out and went to work. I had cousins in that school, and so we were especially close to them. It just happened they weren't in my grade. And actually that worked out well with our cousins, because there were 7 of those kids too. And I think we had to share the geography books and the math books. And so we would just, with our 2 families, why, those textbooks got well used. Every year there was somebody there to use them.
So if you had 7 children, and there were 7 children in your cousin's family, you could have been nearly half the school.
Well, that's right. I figured up the other day, there were 5 in my family there at one time, probably just for a year or 2, and then my oldest sister would have probably been out. See, I was child number 5 in the family, and my little sister and little brother hadn't started. But then when my little brother started, why then my oldest sister would have dropped out. So there were 5 of us in there at one time. Then we had another family that had 7 children. They just lived down the road. But again, all 7 were not in the school at one time. But that did make a lot of pupils.
It didn't take very many families to make up your school, did it?
That's right.
What items did individual students and their families provide? Pencils or chalk?
Oh yeah, we had those big chief tablets, those red tablets. You ever seen one of those?
I had some of those.
And of course pencil and erasers, and no markers, of course, and a pair of scissors. A box of crayons for us was for the whole family. So it was, somebody kept it in their desk, and if they needed them, then but it was not one per child, I mean a box per child. And then when you were in, 5th grade, I'd say, then you needed some notebook paper, so that when you had to write reports and in ink, then you'd have that. And then we had the stick pens, where you dip them down in the ink, and then you needed a bottle of ink. And again, that was we just had that for our family. Each family kind of had their own.
You would have each had your own pen, but you would have shared your ink?
No, we shared the pen too. But you didn't use that pen a lot. It was just mainly if you had some special report to write. And then we did spelling in ink in, I don't know, I think 6th, 7th, and 8th. We were to write our words in ink.
Where did you get these items? Your pens and your big red chief tablets and your pencils?
Woolworths was in town, and this was in Clarinda, up on the square. And so it just about had to be from there.
How far
Well,
were you?
the drugstore might have had it too. The drugstore had the textbooks. The Rexall drugstore.
How far were you from town?
3 miles. And so then at the drugstore, you had to have get your geography book and your arithmetic book. And I'm just not quite sure about that history book. It almost seemed like the school might have had those. But I know the school had the reading books. We didn't have to buy those Dick and Jane books. They had those. And then health and science, the school I think provided those too.
What activities began the day once students were at their seats?
Well, she would get us, assignments. We knew what we were supposed to be working on, and then she would start with the little children with the reading and the flashcards and that kind of thing, and then just start working up the classes. Coming up to the recitation bench and she had all those many subjects and many students to get them worked in through the day. And the little children, maybe sometimes a bigger student would help with the flashcards over on that extra recitation bench or some of that kind of thing, while just over to the side quietly.
Did you have lots of different teachers?
No, we only had, I had one for the primary and first grade. Let's see, I had 4 teachers, I guess.
How many teachers were in this building? Just one teacher at a time?
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, one.
But 4 different ones in your 9 years.
Right. And at one time, there was sort of like a student teacher. The county superintendent brought out a nice young lady to work with my grade, and I think it was 3rd grade, maybe. She worked with us for, I don't know whether it was probably 9 weeks, I suppose, but I don't recall that.
Do you remember what any of the teachers' names were?
Yeah. I remember all of them.
Tell us their names.
Well, the first one, her name was Zora.
Zora.
Do you want the last name too?
I do.
Zora Duncan. And then I had Frances Davis and Elizabeth Flukey.
Fluky.
Fluckey.
Thank you.
And Wanda Smith. And Wanda is still alive. She's 90-some. And she was, of course, my favorite teacher out of all of those. And she lives in Clarinda, and I phoned her the other day, and we had the best chat about old days. And when I'm ever in Clarinda, I usually see her maybe at a restaurant. I'm sure the others are all gone. Zora was quite an old lady, and Frances was very young, and she was just there the 1 year. And Elizabeth was an older lady and quite heavy. And then Wanda was younger, but very energetic. She was an excellent, excellent teacher. Now, Elizabeth lived in Clarinda, and she didn't have a car. And she would walk to school unless somebody would stop and pick her up. And so that's when times were really, really hard. And so that would have been almost 3 miles that she'd walk out there. Now she'd get a lot of rides, seemed like going back into town, because sometimes you're picking up, parents come pick up their kids and they were going into town, or I don't know, and there were other people that would go. But now Wanda told me that she came with the one of the rural route mailmen that were around. And this one, he always had to go on down 71 further, and so she would go to the post office and meet him. Her parents would take her to the post office and meet him, and then he would load up the mail, and then, you know, they delivered baby chickens and all kinds of stuff, and she'd ride out then in the morning. In the afternoon, her mother would drive down and then help her get the school all cleaned up before they left. But we had a bonus too with her mother. Her mother loved to play the piano. So she'd come in, probably half hour before school was out, and play the piano, and we'd sing. And we had a lot of those wonderful songs that came out in World War II, because, see, this was there in the 40s. And You're a Grand Old Flag, and Praise the Lord, and Pass the Ammunition, and all of the different songs for the, Anchors Away, each one of the services. But anyway, but Wanda would ride with the mailman in the morning, and then her mom would get her in the afternoon.
How did the teachers organize the school day's lessons? You mentioned they have all these subjects and all these children.
Well, I don't know. She had to have all the individual classes for reading and math, and of course we always called it arithmetic. Science, they did put us together, like 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th, probably all 4 grades, the last oldest 4. So we would have science with everybody. I mean, all those upper grades, and we'd have that recitation bench clear full, plus the front of the desks, have a little bench on them, and so that was science. And I think health we called it hygiene. Hygiene we did with our regular classmates. And so she would have us come up on that recitation bench, and then we'd check our arithmetic or do our geography or, whatever. And so it was just continually shifting, people going back to their desks and other ones coming up, and keeping the little ones, busy. And there was a sand table that they could go and play at.
How did the day's experiences vary between the grade levels? Were there different subjects?
Oh, well, yes, those little ones. Theirs is mainly reading and printing. Now not printing. No, they didn't. We did not print. It was cursive. You learned cursive when you were 5 years old, and they could, they could color then too, or flashcards. Like I told you, somebody could go and give them flashcards, math, arithmetic flashcards, or reading flashcards. Whenever some of the big girls got their work done, why, they were glad to do that.
Do you remember any lesson activities, any that are most memorable to you?
Well, I remember we did the Indians, a unit on the Indians, and I think that was 4th grade, I believe. And we ended up making some little teepees. I think we just got some twigs, and then of course we had gunny sacks, that loosely woven. Of course, we had a lot of those on the farm. You used gunny sacks, Kind of made kind of like a little Indian village, and I remembered those Indian little textbooks we had that had information about the Indians. That's one thing I liked. We'd have ciphering matches, which was math. She'd have contests, and first two would go up to the chalkboard, and she'd read off the numbers, and then whatever kind of a problem it was, whoever got it first, then you got a mark up there, and then the next two would come up, and then we also had spell downs. A lot of that kind of thing we would do like on Friday afternoons.
What subjects were your favorites?
Oh, I liked arithmetic, and I liked geography. I love maps. I still do.
What subjects were your least favorite?
Oh, I guess, let's see, probably science and hygiene.
Why do you think you didn't like them as much?
Well, and I liked spelling also. Spelling was another one of my favorites. I don't know, arithmetic and spelling, there are subjects, you know, that it's right or it's wrong, you know. And I don't know, I guess I just, with hygiene or science, I don't know, I just really like those others the best.
How much did you interact with others during your lessons? Did you and Betty interact in any ways?
Well, not much, because we would just, you know, have our own assignments to go back and to our seats and do the arithmetic, and we probably practiced spelling back and forth with each other. I don't recall that too much, but
Did the teacher have any helpers?
you mean outside of school?
Or in school? Or?
Oh, well, you know, the bigger girls particularly would be the ones helping with the flashcards and working with the littler children.
Do you remember any rules you had in your classroom?
Well, only one person was supposed to be out at the outhouse at a time. So before you held up your hand or finger to get permission, you needed to look around and make sure nobody else was gone. And I don't know, you weren't, you know, supposed to talk and whisper and do anything disruptive.
What discipline techniques were used to enforce these rules?
Well, I don't really remember them, you know, saying too much about. It just seemed like it was understood that that's what it was to be. And I just remember a couple of times, it was Betty's brothers was who it was that would get in trouble once in a while, and the teacher would take them out to that cloakroom, and I don't know what really happened out there, but she must have taken them out there and talked to them or did threaten them or something. I don't know. But you had, you know, like so many of your family members were there and your cousins and all this and that. So there were so many different ages. We just, I don't know, we just seemed like we just kind of did what we were supposed to.
How did you get the teacher's attention when you needed to ask a question?
Well, you would hold up your hand. or if she was sitting at her desk and not having class, you could go up there. I have one funny story about one little girl in our school that wasn't the brightest. She was a neat little girl, but she just wasn't really smart. So she takes her notebook and a ruler and a pencil, and she goes up to the teacher up at the front desk and she says, "Would you help me to draw a conclusion?" That girl's still alive. She went on and had a productive life, but yeah, she had the ruler with her, see? "Would you help me draw a conclusion?"
How did you know it was time for lunch?
Well, we had a big, country school clock up on the wall, and you knew when it was 12 o'clock. I think your stomach probably told you too, I don't know. And, okay, so we just know when it was 12 o'clock.
So then what was the procedure?
Well, we'd get our lunch pails, and some, like the one family, Betty's family, they were close enough that they could go home. But they were the only ones. The rest of us were further away. And then we could sit like, over those big desks. We could put three people in each one of those or whatever. And you just eat, and the teacher would come over and eat with you, or sometimes we'd go out on those front steps of the school because that'd be nice, shady. I remember us sitting out under a tree a few times. I don't know how often we did that. And just, you could eat lunch with, whoever you wanted to. So it depended upon the weather.